Hello and good morning, and welcome to New Best Practices for Management and Leasing. Before we get started this morning, I want to thank our very generous sponsors, Arvig Multiwave, Cozen O'Connor, and Elliott's Painting and Decorating. We would not be able to put on these very informative webinars without their generous sponsorship and offer to you folks who are on the line at no cost. So thank you very much to these sponsors. I want to give a few pointers so that you have the best webinar experience on GoToWebinar. Number one, you need a good signal. Typically an Ethernet connection is the best connection, but if you have a strong Wi-Fi, that works well. We suggest you close all other programs except the webinar. Any sort of programs, streaming services, email, browsing, anything like that will actually interfere with your bandwidth and might make the quality of either the sound or the visuals less than par. So we suggest closing all programs except the webinar while you're viewing this webinar. If you are having issues, 99% of problems on this webinar platform, if you log out and log back in, typically those are easily resolved. It shouldn't take more than a minute or two. We have Emily Nimchek in our office who is standing by for any audio technical issues. If you do need help, you can email her and she should be able to walk you through any technical help. As you heard when we started, attendees will be in listen-only mode and muted throughout the webinar this morning. If you do have a question, questions are encouraged, especially by our panel today. So we encourage you to type out those questions in the questions section of your controls. You can see that with the red arrow there. We will be answering questions at the end of the session. If you are having trouble hearing sound, first check where the source of your speakers are, where that circle is. If you click that down arrow, you should be able to select where your speakers are coming from, and that might help with if you have no audio. If you're still having issues with audio, you can always click phone call there at the top where the red arrow is pointing. That will give you the dial-in information, and then you can call in, listen from your phone, but view the material on your computer. Other common sound issues. Static or clicking sounds, usually that has to do with your cell phone, being close to either your mic or your speakers. We suggest moving that away. If you have poor, choppy audio quality, usually that has to do with other programs being up, as I mentioned before. If the problem persists, again, switch to telephone mode, use telephone in the audio pane, and you can dial into the conference, but still view the visual material on your screen. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available publicly on MHA's YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and watch it, you can always do that. MHA stresses that this webinar is not to be construed as legal or operational guidance. We encourage firms to seek expert consultation to ensure comprehensive coverage. Also, because the situation, which is COVID-19, is evolving rapidly, the information in this presentation is the best available resources at the time of publication. Today's date is June 4th, 2020. The views that will be expressed in the webinar are attributed to the individuals expressing them and do not necessarily represent the views of MHA, its members, board of directors, staff, or sponsors and participating companies. Now I'll transition and introduce our panel for this morning's webinar. First up, we have Sue Picotte. Sue is the Senior Vice President of Asset Management and Operations. operations support at IRET. She has been in the multifamily industry since 1984 and is highly knowledgeable in all aspects of property operations, including new construction, due diligence, repositioning, rehabs, lease-ups, acquisitions, and dispositions. Janet Rosseth. Janet started Cadence Marketing Solutions after 20+ years serving the multifamily development and management industry in roles directing marketing and leasing departments. Her background in assessing needs and deploying solutions spans over lease-ups, digital/software tools, leasing/prospecting/resident relations, training and mentoring, and much more. Jennifer Gordon. As president and partner of multifamily, Jennifer is responsible for overseeing the multifamily business at the Excelsior Group. The portfolio consists of core value add mixed use and high-rise assets valuing over $1 billion. Jennifer joined the Excelsior Group in 2011 and has grown the portfolio through development, acquisition, and third-party management from 400 units to over 4,000 units. And last but certainly not least is Clint Blaiser. Clint is the president and CEO of Halverson and Blaiser Group, a diversified real estate investment and management company managing more than 3,000 units of multifamily housing. His areas of expertise are apartments, sales, market analysis, rentals, and investment properties. And at this time, I am going to turn it over to Janet Rosseth to kick the panel off.
Thanks, Aubrey. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to switch to show my screen here. All right. So topics today, we thought that we would tackle first a couple of hot topics that we all feel like we have been knee deep in for the last 2 months. But we'd also like to leave a lot of room for questions and answers. We actually had a ton of questions submitted from the attendees today, which we will try to address, and we'll try to leave some room also for new questions. Although the topic is heavily related to reacting and responding to COVID challenges, we realize that the last week has presented a whole new set of challenges as well. So we will save a little bit of room for those questions, but we'd like to get through the bulk of the COVID-related information first. So quick hot topics. I'm going to cover marketing and leasing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sue, who will cover training and team engagement, and then on to Jen, who will cover communications across the organization, and Clint will cover leadership. So marketing and leasing, one of the important things to note is we've actually seen an increase in lead volume year over year. 14% was the number noted by CoStar a couple of weeks ago. So I keep watch on whether or not that has changed. Specifically, there's been a new increase in larger units that are being looked at. I'm sure people being stuck in their apartments a lot longer, working from home, are looking for more space. And also an increase in more engagement on all of the virtual tools and 3D tools that our ILSs have made available to our prospects. We're also seeing 53% response rate on willingness to close off of a virtual tour, and 63% if that virtual tour is conducted by a live agent. So we'll talk about that in a different slide here, but there is definitely still a need for human involvement and the leasing agent involvement in the practice beyond just showing videos or giving people access to your online website. The changing demographic of renters in the pipeline, I think we all expected a certain level of moving to happen coming into spring, the usual lease expirations, new relocations, but there is a whole nother pipeline that seems to be popping into the search as well. And that might be a population of people who weren't expecting to move, but now that they are forced to spend a lot more time in their home with all of their family members or all of their household, are finding the need for a larger space or finding the need for a more affordable space. So there is a new population out there looking for homes. Another new trend is rapid content creation. I think we've created more content in the last 2 months than we have in the last 2 years. And much of that, as exciting as it is, has been created by our on-site team members. Usually we rely on the marketing department or vendors to take time and detail out exactly how the content is going to reflect on the brand, but we've been pushing content out so fast in terms of leasing, in terms of do-it-yourself maintenance videos. So there definitely is a trend in the amount of content that's coming out. I do want to touch on fraud alerts real quick. Not my favorite subject, but with all of the online leasing that's happening and the virtual tours, there has been a little uptick in fraudulent applicants. I think it's really wise if you have a partner that's doing your screening for you to ask the question, hey, what are you seeing in fraud? What should I be watching for? This might be an entirely different webinar coming at some point from MHA, but it's worth noting that we should keep an eye on it. I'm going to jump to the next slide here. New best practices in leasing. Our prospects are finding their way to fast access to self-help tools. They understand that they need to do a little bit more homework and a little bit more research, and that there's more tools out there for them to find as much information on your property as they can using the tools that are out there. I have found it really helpful with some of my clients to try to nurture some of these leads along with the self-help tools using auto replies. I've had quite a few sites tell me that they are just inundated in email leads and trying to respond. So we found it really helpful to create an auto reply that leads your prospects directly to the tools that you want to talk with them on when you get to that conversation. So if the auto reply can be a bridge between when they first reached out to you to when you've been able to pick up the phone and call, you can provide them links directly to the video that they're going to want to watch, directly to your neighborhood page, directly to your online application. But here's my tip. Don't just send them a link to your website. It actually takes a lot of work for prospects to try to navigate where we know the information already is and we find it really easily. So in the conversation, in your auto reply, actually put several links to very specific information. This way, when you call, you can have them open that email and open those links while you're talking them through the process. Which leads me to the next point. One of the newest best practices in leasing has become the phone. For the last 10 years, when we train leasing teams and leasing practices, it seems like the conversations always revolve around chat and email and how to push information back and forth electronically. But people actually really are populating towards the phone right now. And if you have the ability to pick up the phone and dial that prospect versus emailing them back, you're going to cut to the chase on that conversation so much faster. The phone really does convert. And here's the reason behind that in the next bullet, is it used to be that our follow-up averaged 5 to 8 touch points from lead to lease. That was a whole 2 months ago. People generally required 5 to 8 touch points during the leasing process to move from lead to lease. Now it's 8 to 12 touch points. So if you take all that lead volume that's coming into your pipeline and you multiply it by, say, 10 touch points, that's an awful lot of pushing emails back and forth on your leasing team. So try to use those auto replies to allow people to prepare for your phone call, and then pick up the phone and call, and you'll save yourself a ton of those touch points and get right through the conversation on what's most important to that prospect. Lead response is more than just responding. Sometimes we check a box and say we responded to the lead, or our CRM prompts us and says, it's time for you to respond to this lead. It's not just a checked box. It really is creating a conversation and moving towards the next step in the process. So be sure you're taking advantage of that. Also, in the moment tours, I think this is one of the coolest new things that has come out of COVID leasing, is you can literally be on the phone with a prospect and say, hey, do you want to take a tour right now? I'll send you a link on Facebook or on Zoom, and you can just pick it up and I'll take you over to the model and we'll go on a tour right now. We've never had that process before. We probably could have, we just didn't realize how valuable it was. But that has been really effective. Instead of emailing back and forth and waiting for someone to tell you when they can get on a call or get on a tour, just send it over right now and go for it. New tools expected by prospects, polished videos, 3D tours. Those are the Matterports that some of the ILSs offer. You can order them yourself as well, but they're a 3D tour through the video. A gallery image tours, find and use your own tools. Software to track and manage leads. If you don't have a CRM system or some sort of sophisticated Excel system to track your leads, it really is time to start building that out. Live tours that are offered instantly. Some are using FaceTime, some are using Skype, some are using Zoom and Google, and Facebook actually has a new tool as well. So lots of tools available for you to use. I actually have a slide further down our presentation. If you download this presentation, there is a slide under resources where I listed out many of the available tours to produce videos, produce 3D tours, produce self-guided material, all the vendors that are in there. So that should be available to you to check into some of those vendors on your own as well. Some of the self-guided tours also are really getting popular, more so on markets where every apartment has an individual entrance. For the Twin Cities, that's a little tricky to get people through your entryway into your controlled entrance buildings and through to a specific unit that you want to show them. But self-guided tours are definitely picking up in this market as well. New protocols for in-person tours. Ultimately, the goal is to protect your staff. That's really a responsibility on all of our organizations, is to protect our staff first and foremost and protect our prospects and residents as well. My advice is really to offer in-person tours as the last step in the conversation instead of the first step, which we used to do. See if you can get all the way through the process of a video tour, calling on the phone and talking through the tools that are on your website. And if prospects still feel like the only way they're going to be able to make a decision is to come and see it in person, then allow appointments only, no walk-in tours. Explore self-guided tours. The big buzz in the market is SGTs, that's self-guided tours. Plan a route that can be contactless or minimal touch, and work off of a hybrid. Some properties are finding a lot of success in guiding the prospect to the apartment, unlocking it at the time of their tour, and then calling on the phone and talking them through what they're going to want to see in that tour. Best practices in marketing. I'm just going to jump through this real quickly. If you're not using Google My Business, this is a fantastic first step. Google has offered so many powerful solutions within your Google My Business page, and it is free. You can list your floor plans under products, you can post your videos, you can share your hours, you can share changing information, and it's literally a zero-click option for them to get directly to your site instead of going from Google into potentially your competitor or into a search that leads them down more paths. It's instant right to your door or to your phone. Utilize your ILS tools. Our partners have come up with so many cool tools in this time frame. Bells and whistles that, just like us, would have taken years to onboard, and they have onboarded this stuff in a matter of 2 months. I'm so impressed with the tools that are coming out from all of them. So if you have partners with ILSs, call them up, ask what's new, ask how you can use it. Social media, definitely a great tool, especially building community and communicating through to our reality beyond just that first. I see a lot of websites still have that very first COVID-19 statement on their website. That's kind of old news. We're into a lot of new things. Have you updated on whether or not you're offering in-person tours or how you're currently touring or that you're slowly reopening? It's a good time to just stay in the reality of the moment and be very human. Also highlight your tour options loud and clear across all of your mediums. Make sure that everybody knows how and when you're able to take tours right now. I'm going to turn it over to Sue. Sue, I'll run your slides. I'm going to jump off video here.
Thanks, Janet. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about training. We worked really hard at IRET to keep our teams engaged over the past 90 days. Kind of feels like dog years. One of the things that we were totally lucky on is that over the past 12 months at IRET, we had implemented a lead to lease program, and our final phase, final properties, rolled out on March 9th. Timing of that was absolutely in our favor given COVID restrictions that went into place in mid-March. So all prospect engagement is now managed through our lead to lease program. Applications are online, screenings online, and leases can be signed electronically. Internally, we have our in-house training manager, and we've also been working with a training consultant for a number of months. We had been working on creating week-long onboarding for every on-site position and a mentor program. And in mid-March, we did one of my favorite exercises, which is stop, start, change, and continue, and applied that specifically to training. And we stopped working on all of those things that we had been working on and really focused on getting all of our team members comfortable with working outside of the office or sight unseen leasing. Depending on physical office space and individual needs, we had team members working from home, some from on-site offices with doors locked, and we still needed to lease apartments. The goal was and still is to keep occupancy high during this unknown time. We started weekly live webinar trainings that we recorded and then add to our learning management system in case someone missed it or somebody wants to go back and review that session. Our internal team worked really hard and rolled out their very first session on the last Thursday in March and have been hosting webinars every Thursday since. And we now have them scheduled through the end of July. The first 4 weeks were a deep dive into tour without a tour is what we called it. And our topics included virtual leasing, taking control in email and text, rapport building, prospect engagement, and virtual closing. One of the classes specifically was on resident engagement, and we followed it up a bit with an internal competition, encouraging our site teams to virtually engage with residents. This will be a long-term practice for us moving forward. In the documents that'll be available to you after this session is a list of 50 ideas in 50 minutes to maybe give you some ideas to try at your properties. We all know that our site teams already wear many, many different hats, and we are in a time that none of us have experienced, and it requires a whole bunch of grace and patience. Keeping that in mind, we want to provide our team members with support to gracefully interact with residents and their direct reports. Everyone has a bad day in this. And over the next 6 weeks, we're going to be rolling out a number of classes that just focus on emotional intelligence and coaching and counseling. Janet, can I get the next slide?
Got it, Sue.
Thanks. I have it?
Yep, it should be up.
Okay. Next slide.
I think it's back a slide.
I'm on 8. Do I need to be on 9?
Yep.
Yeah, the content creation slide would be great.
Okay. Got it. Sorry about that.
Order. So as Janet mentioned, there's been a lot of content created and we have definitely done our part in that. Much of our training has been around the basics, but really putting training into effect is doing it and taking action with it. We can all get tied up in how complicated this is and how hard it is, and it's really not. It's basic. It's the consistency part of our business that has always proven to be the most challenging. We actually rolled out a video contest that followed up on those 4 weeks of virtual leasing training or tour without a tour training. And we had 3 goals in mind in rolling out this virtual leasing contest. The first was to help our team members stay focused on the basics. The second was to actually get everyone comfortable in front of a camera. Not everyone in the world posts selfies all the time, so you got to get people comfortable in front of the camera. The third is we wanted to create a content library in order for our teams to easily send a video to a prospect or be able to post it on social media. We accomplished this by creating a video leasing contest. Every office team member was required to submit a leasing video of a vacant rent-ready unit at their property. We provided them with guidelines, helpful video tips. We gave them a copy of judging criteria that we would be using. And when it was all done, we had 159 videos in our library, which we were just thrilled with. So we have videos of apartments from 70 assets. Our regionals took part. Some of them did a little song and dance, which was super fun. And our senior leadership also created a video. We set up judging teams, RPMs, with some of our corporate support staff, judged the videos, narrowed it down to a top 10, which were then judged by our executive team, and the top 3 videos were awarded with Amazon gift cards. Huge content creation piece for us. Another content creation piece is that we actually owned a Matterport camera before COVID, and in the past month, we've purchased 2 more. And we have added to our turnover process a Matterport 3D tour video. And in select markets, once the unit is 100% rent ready, the team will go in and take a Matterport video that we can then link to that exact available unit on our website, so the prospect can see that unit online. We're really excited about that. We anticipate that it'll take 3 to 4 years for us to have videos of every single unit in those markets. And in addition to that, we're able to use the Matterport, pull still photos out of the Matterport, and we quite often send them to a company called Box Brownie, which then virtually stages them for us. And we have more content that way. It's great for floor plans that maybe you only have 2 or 3 of them, but yet you can look, it looks like you have a model. Additional content creation to that is here in Minneapolis, we hired a local photographer to take professional videos for us. We provided scripts and he did the voiceover, and we now have professional videos for select assets. Our next project is the do-it-yourself maintenance videos. We're breaking it into 2 different categories. One is general, that'll work across our portfolio. Whatever class of property and whatever state it's in, every toilet has a shutoff valve, and we can make a video showing someone how to shut that off. The second category of videos that we will be doing for maintenance is we are going to be asking our site teams to create a move-in orientation of an apartment at their property that we will be able to send a new move-in, and that they can watch that video in their own time and learn how to work all the appliances, the thermostat, where the breaker box is, all of those types of things. We are also going to do instructional move in and move out videos that we can provide residents in case they're not comfortable with social distancing and we're not able to personally attend to them on a move in or move out video, or move in or move out inspection. The one thing we learned through this is that necessity is the mother of invention, and without COVID-19, what we have accomplished in 90 days would have literally taken us years to get done. I'm going to turn it over to Jen Gordon.
We're going to take just a minute here for Aubrey to set up a poll before I put Jennifer's slides on the screen. Aubrey, do I need to give you presenter back?
Nope, I threw the poll up there so folks could answer the poll. It's up on the screen. And we'll wait just about 30 seconds. Collect your answers. All right, Jennifer, you should be good to go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer, I'm putting your slides on.
Thank you, Janet.
There you go.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I was going to speak about communications, but last minute we snuck in an additional operations slide because it answered one of the questions that came in ahead of time, which was, are you changing anything now that you expect to last into the future? And really, we have been focusing a lot on our staffing structure and how this has changed it. COVID has been such a disruptor, and so we're really capturing that opportunity to do some things that may have taken our industry years to get to, but now our owners, our clients are more open to doing things differently. We're also responding to the thing that Janet spoke to, which is how prospects are just looking differently. We need to keep them moving through that process. Any pause in that process could deter them from actually, end up leasing with us. And so we're really researching the use of artificial intelligence for those immediate responses via chat and email and obviously auto response, but adding the artificial intelligence piece of it. That's also causing us to look at maybe a centralized leasing team, having more people available across more hours of the day, able to respond to those requests is actually beneficial, we believe. And so we're evaluating that right now. That is probably going to potentially, we could be looking at both of them separately, but the modified work hours within that in our offices. So even before COVID, we were starting to analyze if we needed to be open as many hours as we were because of the very electronic nature of where our business is at now. And so COVID has definitely caused us to look at that more specifically. And maybe that even leads to modified job roles, more concierge, less leasing, because the leasing is done in centralized leasing teams. This is all really fluid for us and we're not there yet, but it is definitely, COVID was an instigator for this in our analysis, and we're really excited to hopefully capture on an opportunity to modify things and do them different. In addition, we do believe at some point, it's not happening quite yet, we do believe at some point that 40 million people being unemployed might mean that we have more applicants in the multifamily career industry. So we actually looked proactively at our hiring practices and are adding a recruiter to our team, are shoring up our intake processes, intake process, dispose. So we think that that's going to be important to help support our teams and to just be able to capture those people who are largely unemployed and looking to join our industry. Janet, if you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. I wanted to speak to you guys a little bit today too about communications. I have been doing this for more than 20 years and have never appreciated communication so much. I do think that there is a great opportunity to, whether communication is done well or whether it's done poorly is going to affect how others trust you. And so focusing on communication, having a strategy is really important. Some people, I'm sure the majority of the people on this webinar would say, my job isn't really communication, that's for the leaders of our company or that's for my manager. And I would say that everybody who is in our industry is a leader to someone in some way. And your communication or your follow-up of the communication that was extended by your leaders is really important in furthering your company's brand and reputation. So I would say, the biggest thing that we did was we had to strategize what that plan was, and that continues today. In looking back, we did this 8 weeks ago, but we did it again this past week with the riots that occurred and the protests and having to board up a number of our properties. So this is an ongoing strategy that anybody can embrace anytime. So what it is, honestly, if you even only take 20 minutes, it's really important to just sit down and say, who is my audience? Who am I communicating to? Next, who is going to do those communications? We are really trying at our corporate office to template as much of the information that goes out to residents broadly as possible to just try and streamline that. But we also know that it needs to be specific by the property. And so who's the audience? Is it my client? Is it my owner? Is it my resident? Those messages are different. Establish what frequency. Are you going to do it once a week, a couple times a week? Early on in a crisis, it's really important to do it more frequently. I was sending 3 emails a week to our clients early on. I moved to biweekly, now I moved to once weekly, and now I'm on an as needed basis. So you want to adjust that frequency as you go through that as well. And then what method? Email obviously is the main method, but there's videos, there's chats, there are professionally done marketing pieces. There's a number of different things that you'll want to do from a method standpoint. And I think it's important to analyze those and to change it up. And lastly, you just want to check the relevance. We all are getting so much communication these days. So making sure that what you're sending is relevant is really important. We need to be addressing our clients, our residents, our prospects, our vendors to say, hey, we're not just checking in with you. We want to know, how has your business changed? How has your life changed? And how can we respond to that? Janet, if you want to go to the next one. Just along the lines of relevance, I just wanted to throw a couple things up there that were the most relevant for us in our communication recently. Oh, back one, Janet. You know, obviously new protocols and regulations and occurrences that are happening in your local, you know, state and city from a regulation standpoint, safety and health. Modifications to business practices are really important. Are you keeping your teams, your owners, your vendors, are you keeping them up to date on what your modifications are? I think engagement and encouragement is so important right now too. Everybody needs a morale booster right now. I don't know that we could share enough wins in the environment that we're in. So you know, sharing positivity and really spreading encouragement is so important. And value alignment too has been an important thing. I heard early on, values have never been more apparent nor important as they are right now. They're really really obvious, and they're also extremely important. So making sure that your teams are value aligned is really important in your communication. And then I will turn it over to Clint.
Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone can hear me okay. Under the leadership, I just wanted to kind of talk about how to show up. It's definitely crazy times out there right now, but it's a really imperative for the leaders to show up ready, calm, and make sure that you're looking out for your employees. They're looking for you to lead. They're looking for you to provide some of the answers and the solutions. Some of the previous presenters have talked about how to show up. Again, thank God for the technology. I don't know how we could have done this 15 or 20 years ago, but it's not just in person with masks and safe. Now it's online, it's Zoom meetings, it's conference calls. There's all different kinds of ways to show up. And then definitely as a leader, there's no more Monday through Friday 9 to 5. It's definitely a 24/7. It can be very stressful, but again, you have to make sure that you're setting the tone for your site. Janet, if you could maybe flip to the next slide. This is where we went with the calming sentiment. I try to do the keep calm and carry on. What's really been great with the technology is going to a lot of these webinars, doing a lot of the Zoom meetings, whether it's the apartment industry, it's the office building owners and managers type seminars, to try to gather all the information, take in all the resources, and then use that to reduce the fear and educate your staff on all the resources and if this, then that for direction. One of the big things I've learned through this whole thing and have always tried to abide by, but even more so now, is the trust but verify. A lot of times we've had, oh, we got a confirmed case of COVID, or we got a riot outside our building. Well, when in fact we drilled down on it, it wasn't a riot outside the building. It was a handful of people walking down the road with a sign. When we drilled down and actually talked to the folks that had the confirmed COVID case, it was in fact not a confirmed case. It was a person that was not feeling well and was advised by the doctor that they didn't have testing available, but they should go home and self-quarantine. So often it's like being in the church or the building and yelling fire. You don't really want to shout fire if it's not in fact true. So you want to make sure that you're verifying some of these facts, if you will. Also very important to understand your employees' personal preferences in cases. Is it still a phone call? Is it a text? Is it an email? The Zoom meetings are kind of nice, but nothing beats the in-person for watching for body language and cues. And a lot of times the emails can take on unintended tones. And I've found myself a lot of times these days trying to call people via email, and it's just a lot easier to pick up the phone. But and then now more than ever, it's, you know, making accommodations. It's very hard, I think, to try to do a generalization, one policy fits all. Whether it's resident renewing their lease, whether it's a resident that can't make their payment, whether it's an employee that can't make it to work because the kids are at home, you have to really get personal. And how is this affecting their day-to-day, and how do we work together to provide solutions that kind of creates a win-win for everybody on this. Janet, if we could maybe jump to the next slide when we're talking about questions that had been submitted. I know there was a handful of questions that were COVID related, and my years in the business have always been, we are not attorneys, and I always want to run everything by our legal counsel before we start going on about HIPAA and COVID and how do we communicate that to residents, respecting privacy. I know the other hot one on here is the reopening of the amenities. We have decided not to do any of that yet until we get good direction from the state and the governor on that. It's very hard for, I get it. I'm talking to my managers, there's huge pressure from residents to open them, and then for every 1 or 2 emails you get about opening, you get those from the people saying thank you for practicing safe distancing and not caving into those pressures. I don't know how all the politicians do it right now. It's very hard, I think, trying to keep that balance, but just know that that's the stuff that's happening to your staff on the sites as well. Guys, I don't know what, we had some more questions on leasing and marketing, and there's Janet and some of the other presenters here are far more qualified than I am to maybe answer some of those leasing and marketing questions.
Thanks, Clint. We're actually going to take the next poll right now because it has to do with whether or not amenities are opening, and I think everybody's very curious about that. So Aubrey's going to run the poll.
Looks like we have a lot of really great answers coming in. Continue answering the poll question here up on your screen. We'll hopefully discuss that a little later. Great, I'll close that one out.
Thanks, Aubrey. More questions that were submitted via the attendees. Under leasing and marketing, what are management offices opening up for walk-in traffic, for operating by appointment only? What are people doing to make appointment showing safe for employees and clients, and are team members comfortable with this? That was a lot of questions in one question, but ultimately it's really, really varied. Some of our employees are comfortable, some of them are not. And I think what Jennifer noted in her portion of the presentation, as far as how job roles are changing, I have seen a number of clients that have just changed how the leasing office operates. If you've got one person who is an at-risk health case that isn't comfortable opening up, but there are others who are very comfortable and, you know, just really desperate for that human interaction and the chase of a lease. I think as leasing agents, we kind of get that, we need our leasing mojo. Maybe shift so that the person who is at risk is handling leads via email and behind the scenes. And when it's time to turn to an in-person tour, it's scheduled with one person who's comfortable with that. Really, it's ultimately the decision of your company. Tell me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, Clint, Sue, but it is the responsibility of the organization to keep you safe. So it's very important that you're doing as they ask and as they are putting in place. But for walk-in traffic, I haven't heard of anybody that's doing walk-in traffic. It's appointment only, it's masks, it's hand sanitizer and deep cleaning of models if we are even at the point of taking an appointment tour. The second question, which apps or technologies have been useful? Again, this varies so much by a couple of things. The company's preferences, also the individual preferences on site. You know when you're leasing which tool you're most comfortable taking a prospect through, and you're going to veer towards that tool. We can all say that we don't do this, but we kind of veer towards our favorite leads come from an ILS source that we personally love more. But remember, it's about your prospect, it's not about you. So pick which app or which technology is going to work best to showcase your property. But again, there's a whole list of resources in a slide here coming up that you can look through, take a quick stroll through all of their websites and see which tools might work best for you. Noticing yeah.
Just to speak to that roles changing and kind of to your point, you know, if there's, I've experienced, there's a leasing agent who's really comfortable doing video tours. There's a leasing agent that's not. I mean, in changing those roles, just have the person who's comfortable doing it all, have the other person do the paperwork behind the scenes, split the commission. Like, it's different from how we normally do it, but those are the kinds of things that we just need to change up if that's what works for that property.
Absolutely. I don't think there is a person or a company out there right now that's not in a constant mode of pivot. It's my favorite word right now. Question number 3 was, have we noticed buying signals different? Yes, I think in the beginning of this, just in general, people who are coming out and searching for apartments were serious. Nobody was just going to come and look for an apartment without being serious about moving in COVID. Perhaps we've seen that change just a little bit. People are home, people are bored. It might be easier to go and look for online tours. But that's where, again, my tip of using your auto replies really comes in handy, is if you can use an auto reply well, it's going to filter out those who are very serious. The ones who reply back to the auto reply are extremely serious, and you can get through that way. The ones who are saying over and over again, I just can't make a decision without seeing it in person, that's a very clear buying signal. I think it's up to you as well, though, to fish out those buying signals early, and I would encourage you to ask in the beginning of the process, where are you at in your buying decision? Where are you at in your leasing decision? When do you plan to make a decision, and what's going to help you make that decision? Number 4, what's the best response when asked what our COVID rent specials are and why we don't have them? Hey, I'm always a fan of not having specials because it really preaches to the quality of your service and your site. If you're able to say, you know what, we just really are still very full, or we still have a really high volume of leads and just haven't needed to offer a special at this time. Screening, I'm going to jump to that one, and I'm just going to tell you that samples of rental criteria and hybrids of individual screening. MHA put out a fantastic video presentation on all of the new ordinances specific to Minneapolis. We attached the link here on this, and perhaps Aubrey can lead you to it as well, but it's worth going out and watching if you have additional questions. None of us are experts specifically at screening, and it's very hard to keep up with all the changes. So I would encourage you to watch the video, but to also ask your screening company as well.
Hey, Janet, there's a great question that, or a comment that was submitted that says that they're noticing a spike in phone calls in both the number and length of the calls. People are maybe wanting or able to chat more because they're working from home. And so, and they have this need for connection. And so these calls are getting longer. I think that's really important information and data to roll up to the leaders, because I do hear that, you know, our leasing agents are as busy as ever, if not more so. And, you know, logically you'd say, well, they don't have all of that kind of casual interaction of manning the offices. You would think that their time of accomplishing their job would decrease. But in fact, because of this, it may be in fact increasing.
I completely agree. And I'm excited to hear others point that out, because I think if you figure that it takes about 20 minutes to a half hour to tour an apartment with a prospect and go through that conversation in depth, transfer that to the phone. That's how we're doing it now. We're doing it by phone. So if you're having a 20-minute phone call, hooray, and that is a huge buying signal. Can we jump to the next set of questions? Rents and leases.
I think I'm happy to hop on that. I already answered the staffing question, I think, in detail. So if there's any additional questions on that, please let me know. From an attendance policy of employees, how are, you know, others handling delinquent rents? Attendance policies, I think, are just very specific to your company. And I think we are all doing what, you know, what has been in the guidelines, what has across other companies. So I don't think we can answer that specifically. Again, look to your HR professionals for that. How are we handling delinquent rents? I think that's a really important question, especially from a fair housing standpoint. It's so important to document it all, to have multiple levels of approval, to have your owners sign off on all of them, to have it documented, and there's a number of resources for that. I think it's also to be compassionate. I mean, now more than ever, our brand and our reputation is going to be based on how we are behaving in those situations. So it's just delicately, I guess, is the answer. On rents and leases, what additional steps are being taken to offer assistance to our residents beyond waiving fees and holding rents flat? I think that, you know, I'm hearing a lot of renewals that are flat increases. I'm hearing more concessions than we were hearing before. So I think that there's just additional financial assistance that's helping. And that is to answer number two, are you keeping rents flat for the remainder of the year? I definitely don't think anybody is taking any long-term views of anything right now. Till the end of the year, it feels like till the end of the decade. So, you know, you're making 30-day decisions with pricing, you're making daily decisions. Hopefully you're on a revenue management system, and that's, you know, computers helping make it for you. But just, you got to remember that there's, you know, and even from a goal standpoint, just even from a commission standpoint, speaking to the leasing agents out there, you know, having annual goals is almost out the window in a time like this. You have to make short goals and adjust so that you can hit what the specific goals are for this week. They may change next week. And are you offering term leases with no increases, allowing leases to go month to month? I'd say yes, yes, and yes. I mean, if we're doing everything, it depends on the property, it depends on your lease expiration management, on your business plan. But I would say for all of us, we're considering all of those things.
Jennifer, I'd maybe just add, I know in certain cities and certain counties, Dakota County, for example, has a great program that we've referred our residents to when they're on hard times, and that's helped with their rent. St. Paul has a program that's helped a number of residents as well. So trying to stay on top of all the resources and then getting that information to your residents or your customers to help them when they can't pay the rent. We've turned into a kind of a good referral resource for our residents as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we did that early on of just providing them a document with a list of resources that are available, especially at the lower income property range with residents that were hit the hardest by this financially.
I'm going to echo what Jen was saying about rents and lease lengths. For us, it was really dependent on market, as we're in a number of different states, and some of our markets are fairly tertiary. And North Dakota hasn't been as affected as we have here in Minneapolis, so it changes it up. We are on revenue management, and what we were doing with lease renewals was different than what we were doing for new leases. We did let revenue management do its job for anything that was coming available.
I do think we should jump back to the question about amenities opening since we have the poll. 32% responded no use of amenities reservation app, 20% are considering it, 42% don't know. I think the question really is too, are you reopening your amenities yet? And the four of us have been participating on a weekly call with many other operators in town to just discuss and share information and collaborate on how we're all responding under these circumstances. And jump in, Jennifer, Sue, Clint, if you feel something to share. But I think the general consensus was that the more simple amenities are opening. Your grills outside, your outdoor areas, coffee bars. There would be a riot if they didn't reopen, but it sounded like everybody was reopening with, cups are at your own, bring your own cup, perhaps bring your own creamer. But gyms and pools are still a great big question mark. Pools are not open at this point. State of Minnesota isn't even open yet. I can tell you that other markets across the United States that I listen in on have opened pools and removed, 70% of their chairs and restricted the hours a little bit more to when the office is open. And residents have been not only grateful, but very, very respectful, just appreciating that it is open. So when we get to that point, I hope Minnesotans will feel the same and just be happy they have a pool since we don't have the state fair. And fitness centers, I think, are a big question too. Everybody's discussing whether or not to reduce the number of pieces of equipment and the operating hours and provide extra cleaning and self-cleaning materials as well. Would you guys share anything on that as well?
We're really waiting for direction from the CDC and then yet balancing that with state and local guidelines. And we will open amenities pools based on that. I was in North Dakota yesterday, and it's not as bad there, and we actually have opened our pools. And I saw two residents out there, very socially distanced, opposite sides of the pool, enjoying a beautiful sunny day, and we're incredibly grateful.
Good. We have just a few minutes left. Were there any other questions? If you have a question, please type it into the question box so that we can answer it.
Janet, I just want to point out, you guys really did some great resources on there if you want to go to that resource guide.
Oh, yes.
So Sue has that 50 ideas for resident engagement, and she offered it up for this webinar, and I just think they're both great lists, great resources that people can go utilize.
Thank you for noting that, Jennifer. I forgot to move the slides forward, but yes, you can download this entire presentation, and in the handouts within this webinar, you can also download the whole list of 50 ideas for resident engagement. And I looked that over, Sue. There are some fantastic ideas on there.
And I would just like to add, so we did receive, someone said that Some people's antivirus software is actually blocking this document. So if that's doing that for you, please just shoot me an email and I will send the PDF over your way. Happy to do that.
Someone asked also have an example of an amenity reservation app that's commonly used. Aubrey, I can send you a list of a couple of them if you want to share it with the group. But there are a few. Mobile Doorman has a nice amenity reservations app. If you're on Yardi, there is a concierge product that can operate as an amenity app as well. And there's a couple others that are escaping me right now, but I can send the list over and we can share it if you're able to do that, Aubrey.
Happy to do that.
Okay, and then there's another question, maybe I missed this, but what are you guys requiring your maintenance to use for PPE as they have to enter units for emergencies?
I think, again, we're following CDC guidelines, masks, gloves. You know, I mean, doing emergencies only or by appointment. Everyone has a little bit different risk tolerance in terms of residents and if they'll even allow it, but requiring our people to mask and glove is kind of a minimum.
We're doing the same. And we will quite often ask if the resident is in the apartment and the work order's in the kitchen, could they maybe go in their bedroom or, you know, just to create some distance also.
Mm-hmm.
Same for us.
Someone also weighed in and said that Henry is a social engagement and amenity reservation app that they're considering. So there's another resource for you as well.
That's great, thank you for the share.
Yeah, someone asked if we were doing routine work orders yet or just sticking to emergencies. I think across the board, we're doing emergencies, pushing DIY, doing it over the phone and by appointment with, to Sue's point, people either out of the apartment or in another room. I think we hit all the questions.
Clint's got fans.
And I just added here for the folks asking some maintenance questions that we did a webinar very similar to this one, but focused on maintenance last week. And I have added that YouTube link, the recording on our YouTube channel. So that link is in the questions box there. You can check that video out, and there's some more conversation on PPE and work orders, et cetera, that might be of interest to folks. All right, so we are at noon, and I just want to thank our panelists for their time today and all of the hard work that they did putting this presentation together. Was a great presentation, a lot of valuable information. You can download the slides in the handout section of the webinar, or these 50 ideas for resident engagement, that's also there. But I want to just thank our panel. They did a wonderful job. And I want to also thank our sponsors. Our sponsors really help us offer these webinars for free, and we are happy to be able to do that. Our sponsors for today's webinar were Arvig Multiwave, Cozen O'Connor, Elliott's Painting and Decorating. And so thanks to them, as thanks to our panel once again. We do have some upcoming programs that you may be interested in. We actually have 2 classes coming up next week and the week after that with industry expert Lisa Trozine. Those are, one is on maximizing leads and the other one is on virtual tours. That may be of interest to you. Those are next week and the week after that. We have a great class on customer service called Complaints to Compliments. That's also next week. We have an HR course, Managing the Employee Lifecycle, and more. So check out our education calendar, and you can sign up for any of those webinars there. And watch for upcoming programming. So thanks again to our panel. Thanks again to our sponsors, and hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Aubrey.